Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. Well, we got another pistol video for you today. This is one I meant to get to a while back, actually, whenever it came out, but I had some other priorities as far as pistols at the time. But we've had several people ask about this one in the comments, and this is the IWI Masada. Now, it's not a tiny pistol. I've had some requests for several pistols lately that are on the larger side. But with a good feature set and good ergonomics, even a larger pistol can be a good choice. And the big question, of course, is, does the Masada fall into that category? Well, we're going to go over all the features, and we're going to find out whether it's a good choice in just a minute. All right, once again, welcome back. Just want to take a moment to thank all of our viewers and our subscribers. And if this is your first time visiting the channel and you haven't had a chance to do so already, you could do us a big favor. And if you would locate that little subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen, if you could hit that subscribe button and then turn on notifications. If you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video and you can hit the bell icon. It'll let you know whenever we do something new, and that really helps us out a lot, and we definitely appreciate those that do, so thank you so much. So, IWI Masada. I saw this gun when it first came out in my local gun shop, and I meant to take a look at it then, and I just didn't. There's always, as you know, there's always so many different things coming out, and there's so much going on in the gun world. But after having several people ask about it, I decided to go ahead and let's have a look. So anyway, just a little quick background. IWI, this company actually was different at one time. Used to be IMI, which was the Israel Military Industries, and then and this is the same company that produced the Uzi, the Tavor, and many other things that you're familiar with. But in 2005 it became a privately owned company, which is now known as Israel Weapon Industries. So there's that. Anyway, taking a look at it here, the one thing we always like to do, of course, is give you a little size comparison with something else that you're probably used to. And while not an exact comparison, I think this Glock 17 is an appropriate matchup, and I'll tell you why for several reasons. First of all, obviously you can see that we are clear on our Glock 17, and you can see that we are clear and safe on our IWI Masada. Well, your Masada here is a 17+1. We'll get to that more in the features here. And of course your Glock is a 17+1. So they're pistols that are a very similar size and they have the same capacity. So I just think this is a good comparison. So taking a look here, they're practically the same length. And when you go down the firearms, look at the trigger guards, they both have pretty good sized trigger guards. A little bit bigger on the Masada just because it's thinner. I think the outside dimension is the same, but there's more material here on the Glock. So you got a little more room for your finger in here if you're wearing gloves. The grips are very similar, but the IWI's grip is a little bit slimmer when it's in your hand. I'll show you here. As you go over the top and you look, you can see that the guns are very similar as far as width. You look from the back, looking down, you can see that these are very similar in size, but the Masada's grip feels a little slimmer in your hand because of the contours in it. And we'll cover that more when we go over the features. But they're very much similar size weapon. Of course, the reason why I do these comparisons in the first place is mainly just so you can get an idea of how the weapon's going to feel when you carry it. If you've carried a Glock 17 before in any kind of configuration, you know what the weight feels like because of the amount of ammo and what the gun's weight feels like. And that's why we do this. So that's what that's going to be like. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the features because we do have a lot to talk about. And before we get too far into the features, just want to take a moment to recognize and thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of this IWI Masada today. Don's is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. This channel wouldn't be possible without their help. So we thank them as always. Good people. So, in no particular order, kind of going around the firearm here. Obviously, we mentioned it was about the size of a Glock 17. The total length on this is going to be 7.4 inches, so it's a good sized firearm. Of course, this is a striker fired 9mm pistol, as we established earlier. This is a 17+1 capacity, and they are good enough to give you 2 magazines, and they are steel mags. And, you know, a lot of people question why that's worth talking about, but if you've bought firearms, especially if you've bought any number of firearms, you know that one thing that gets expensive really quick is magazines. So, in my mind, the more stuff that they give you with the firearm, the better. And I consider those things in my decision-making process. So that's a plus. As we look over the firearm here, you notice you've got some pretty pronounced serrations on the slide, both front and rear. And these are pretty deep. If you had gloves on, these are pretty easy to manipulate, I would say. We'll go ahead and go over the top of the firearm so you can see the plate here. Now this is your cover plate where your optics mounting goes. Something else that they give you, which is pretty nice, it's an optics ready platform, and it's been designed specifically to work with before optics at this time. And they give you plates for the Trijicon RMR, the Vortex Venom, Leopold Delta Point Pro, and then the SIG Romeo 1. So they give you all that stuff along with you know, a little tool kit to install all that good stuff. It's pretty straightforward, but it's kind of nice that they give you all this right out of the box so that you can equip your firearm with an optic if that's what you want. It's a pretty simple process. As you can see here, you've got your Picatinny rail, so if you want to mount you know, lights, lasers, things like that on the front of the firearm, you've got plenty of real estate to do that. They do have a pretty good sized trigger guard here, and you can see they've got these cuts in the front of the trigger guard, which is kind of nice. I like all those. Anytime the surfaces have some kind of extra gripping capability, I always like that. And speaking of the grip, the texturing on this, it's not real harsh, but it's still a really solid feel. It's a lot like I see on the smaller SIGs these days, you know. It's a good, dense pattern, but it's not a rough pattern. They give you changeable back straps. You see this little pin right here. You just knock that pin out to change these out. It comes with a small, a medium, which is what I have on here, and a large back strap. So you can adjust this thing for whatever size hand or just whatever feel that you like. Now I've got a pretty big hand, and with the medium I was still really comfortable, because basically the way I gauge how big a back strap I need is whenever I fit the weapon to my hand. When my right hand is where it belongs, there's a certain amount of space that I want for the meat of that left hand to fall, and as long as I can get my grip correctly placed, then that thickness feels pretty good to me. And I was able to do that very easily with the medium-sized grip, so that's what I went with. But you've got a choice, obviously, so that's a good thing. Well, obviously the sights, when we were on the top here a second ago, you can see that it's just a 3-dot white sight, but they are steel sights, and of course I'm sure there's some aftermarket stuff out there if you want to change them out, because they're pretty standard sight mounts. The barrel of this firearm is 4.1 inches. It is a cold hammer forged barrel. Your frame, it is a fiberglass reinforced polymer frame. It's got a pretty deep beaver tail, which I kind of like, because if you've ever had one that has kind of a narrow beaver tail and you have a big hand, well, if you've ever been bitten by a firearm, if you ever got railroaded by one, you know that that beaver tail is your friend. Keep your hand clear of all the moving parts. We'll talk about this a little bit more, the range part, but your trigger, it shows to have a 6-pound trigger pull on that. I got a little bit less than that, but it's got a good trigger, and we'll go over that. And of course, it does have some ambidextrous controls on it. Your magazine release here, and then on this side, same thing. your slide release here and here. So it's always good to have those in that way. And of course, your takedown lever is going to be right here. Now, if you're familiar at all with this type of takedown, you can see a lot of weapons have this. You see you have a notch that'll be right there whenever you have it locked back, and then you just bring that lever down. Well, then after you release the slide, lock there, the slide will come right off the weapon, and you can do your basic, cleaning and maintenance, things of that nature. So it's a pretty nice little setup. Another thing, since we're talking about this, if you notice right here when I put the magazine in, if you look at the bottom of the magazine, you can see here at this angle where the light hits it, you can see there's a little cutout right there. So if for some reason you hit the button and the magazine doesn't just fall right out, you've got this place you can grab and strip the magazine out. It's just one of those little details that I think is kind of nice, that makes the weapon a little bit, it looks like it's just little details, things they thought out ahead of time. But the grip feels really good, like I said, comparing it to my Glock 17, and I like my Glocks. But the Glock is more of a, it feels like it's a, kind of a straighter grip. Kind of my hand is having to conform to the grip. And on this Masada, the grip kind of conforms to my hand. It feels really nice. It's a very natural feeling grip. And I don't feel like I've got places of my fingers or my palm that are looking for some place to go. So it's a really well thought out firearm. It's got really nice features, and I really like what I saw so far. Let's go ahead and talk about the range. A lot of times I'll get a new firearm and I won't have a lot of preconceived notions about it, and I won't have a lot of high expectations because I don't know anything about it. And then I get to the range and then I get really happy. Well, that's kind of what happened with the Masada here. Looking at the firearm, one thing I do want to show you right off the bat that I think has a lot to do with how well this thing is. Of course, I was making a comparison with the Glock 17 as far as size, but while we're talking about it, we can also talk about the Glock trigger, and you can see that we're safe and clear on this weapon here. But if you watch the Glock trigger, you got your take up here, and then it kind of gets spongy right until it breaks. Okay, and then it's got a pretty short reset, and then spongy to the back. Now, that's just a standard Glock trigger. Now, I like Glocks, and I don't have a problem with the Glock trigger, but let me show you the difference with the Masada. Let's get it clear real quick. You can see that we are safe and we are clear on this one. So watch my trigger. So we got a little bit of take up, and then right there it just breaks. Here's the reset, which is a little bit longer, just a hair, but then watch. A little bit of take up, and then you have a nice clean break. There. And then see the break. I really love this trigger. And the trigger is so consistent. Masada says this is a 6-pound trigger. I was measuring about 5, a little over 5 when I was using it, maybe 5.3, which is fine with me. That's a great trigger pull. It's just a really good trigger, and what that means for you is that no matter what kind of a shooter you are, if you have a consistent trigger, it's very easy to duplicate your results over and over again. Accuracy, if the trigger's breaking in the same place, it's very easier for you to get those follow-up shots, and it just feels really good to shoot. Now, as far as reliability at the range, I used the usual collection of ammo. I shot my S&B, and I shot some PMC range ammo through it, and it seemed to like that just fine. Got plenty of defensive rounds for it to try. The Critical Duty, the Barnes, the SIG V-Crown, no problem. No failures of any kind. Gun shot really, really well. And interestingly enough, one thing I will mention is that while I was there, there was a gentleman that had his VP9. And as I looked over at his VP9, I had him bring his VP9 over, and I kind of did a size comparison with the Masada. And the VP9 and the Masada are also practically the same size. And I shot his VP9, which actually shoots a lot like the Masada. So it's very interesting that those two guns are so similar. So now I've sort of got myself into having to do a VP9 video, and I'm probably going to have to do a VP9 versus Masada video too, so that'll be coming up. But I just thought I'd mention that because if you've got a VP9 and you've been curious about this firearm, it's got some very similar characteristics, and it would be practically the same to carry it on your body because that's exactly what it feels like. Anyway, so great shooting pistol, very reliable. Obviously, we're just talking about a standard white dot sight setup, which operated just fine, obviously. You can pick them up really easy, and I got really good results. And the only thing I probably would do any different, if there's an option to have like a fiber optic sight from the factory, I probably would go with that because I've really gotten to where that's my preference these days. But a white dot sight setup works just fine. Great shooting gun, extremely reliable. Okay, so what's it like to carry the IWI Masada as a carry gun? Well, if you've watched this channel for any length of time at all, you know that I'm pretty forthcoming about these kinds of things. And I would say that if you like carrying larger firearms, if that's what you normally do, I think you would like to carry this one as well, because it feels a little slimmer in the holster than the Glock does. And Glock 17, you know, was our comparison firearm as far as size. Glock 17 is a little bit more firearm than I'm going to carry on me concealed, really for any reason. About the only time you're going to see me carrying a Glock 17 on me, and actually probably not even then, but if I was, you know, out in the woods, out on my property or something. But usually I'm carrying, if I'm doing that, I'm carrying a 10mm Glock 29 or something like that. But this weapon does feel a lot slimmer than the Glock does as far as in the holster. Now, I carried this with a Galco leather. As far as outside the waistband, I actually had an HK holster that was Galco leather that this fit while I'm waiting on my new holster to come in. But it fit this pretty well, almost like it was made for it. And that was a VP holster, by the way. And like I said, they're so similar in size, it just went right in there. So carrying this outside the waistband, as long as you can dress around it, and for me, if I'm going to carry it in leather on the outside, then for me that means a t-shirt and maybe an outer shirt like a fishing shirt or something that, you know, will help you hide the profile a little bit so that you don't print. I try to be as responsible as I can when I carry and make sure I'm actually concealed, since that's the whole idea. And this weapon actually was pretty nice to carry that way. Now, if I had to do a lot of sitting down or moving around, I think it would become uncomfortable. And that's one reason why I primarily carry the smaller weapons, because if I'm not comfortable, I'm not going to carry it. And one thing that you'll hear emphasized on this channel a lot, there are three things that really go into your carry firearm. It needs to be accurate. In other words, you need to be accurate with the weapon. Doesn't matter how accurate the weapon's advertised, how well you can shoot it. It needs to be reliable, and it needs to be comfortable. But the comfort is so high on the list because I don't care how cool the gun is. If it bothers you when you have it holstered, if it's not comfortable for you to carry, you won't carry it. And if you don't carry it, it's not doing you any good, which is why I tell people, if the only thing that you'll carry consistently is a 22, well then fine, at least you have something. Something's better than nothing. So you can carry this, but it is a heavier gun, and unless that's your preference, if you're not used to carrying a larger firearm, it might not be the way to go. If you're used to carrying like a subcompact guns, you definitely wouldn't want to go with something like this because it would just be like a night and day thing. I also tried this inside the waistband with one of the larger stickies. I can do it, and I was just standing if I wasn't going to be doing a lot of moving around. But this is really too heavy for something like, for me, the only time I'm going to use something like a sticky is with a subcompact firearm where I don't have to worry about, that movement. Because I get a little bit of retention with the other holsters, and that's, for a larger gun, that's what I want. So you can do it, but you have to be able to dress around the firearm, obviously, if you're going to carry a larger one. Now, if you work in a job where you're on your feet all day long, where it's okay for you to carry, and you can carry this in an outside the waistband holster, it's a great choice. I know lots of people who do that, who carry larger guns because they can carry outside the waistband all day, and they're on their feet. But if you did a lot of sitting down, standing up, I don't think it would be as comfortable. So it can be done with the right holster. So those are my observations there. So overall impressions of the IWI Masada. Well, for me, this is something that if you're interested in a gun that has good capacity, that has a lot of good features, that's accurate, and also comes at a pretty decent price point, this is worth a look. The MSRP from IWI on this is $480. That's not what I've been seeing in gun shops. It's been more around, between $5 and $520. And it's just had to shop around, because obviously gun prices, as you know, just like everything else, prices have been fluctuating. A lot of things are very, very high still right now, unfortunately. But that's what I saw. Now, we're talking about a 17+1 capacity firearm. You get 2 mags, you get 4 optics mounting plates, you get the tools to mount your optics. They give you a lot of stuff in the package, which I think is nice. You've got a rail for lights and lasers. You've got serrations on the front and rear, ambidextrous controls as far as your slide stop and your magazine release. You got steel dot sights, good texturing, great grip. You've got interchangeable back straps, small, medium, and large. It's a really good feature set for the money. And it's not just about features for the money. The gun shoots really well. Like I said, the trigger, this trigger is better than a Glock trigger all day long to me, and it's very consistent. It didn't have any trouble with any of the ammunition that I used, and I was just really, really pleased with it. I was actually really excited to shoot this firearm. It was a really good performer. So if anyone has looked at this and didn't give it a second of thought, you really need to take a look at this firearm because it's really good. And we're talking about a company that has a history of making some really good firearms. And probably people's big question is, why did it take them this long to bring something like this out? And, the answer is, who knows? But it's a good result. Plus, you may be thinking, well, look, that's all fine and good, but this gun is just way too big to be a carry gun. Well, for some people, yes, not for everybody. And, some people would look at this gun. There's different ways to conceal firearms, too. I often have carried a gun in my briefcase every day. I carry a gun and I carry an extra magazine. I've been doing that for a long, long time, so I can carry a larger firearm there, even though I've got a smaller one on me. If you're a person that carries a bag or a purse, well, this can easily go in there if you have a holster that'll protect the trigger guard and all that, a safe way to do it. And of course, this would also make a good home defense gun, Whether you left the standard sights on or whether you changed out to an optic, it's a very good shooting gun with good capacity, and it feels good in the hand. It's something that anybody could pick up and be able to shoot really well without a whole lot of practice. So it's got a lot of good features, and it would fit a lot of different categories as far as use. So as far as I'm concerned, the Masada is a great pistol. It's worth a look. So if you've been curious about the firearm, don't be afraid to give the Masada a really good look, because I think it's a great pistol. So that's going to do it for this time, everybody. And as always, we thank you so much for taking the time to watch our videos and stop in. And we appreciate you joining the community on the comments, helping people out. There are a lot of questions get answered by our users, and that's great. So we'll be back soon with another video for you. And until we do, of course, we just ask everybody to be safe. And we will be back very soon. Thanks again. Have a great day.